Hey folks! As most people know, asexuality as an orientation is a relatively new thing. That isn't to say that asexual people haven't existed throughout history, but until the internet they didn't really find each other, and most of the words and definitions of asexuality are very, very new. And as an asexual person, it makes me quite happy to see how we as a community have progressed so quickly. Before I get into a timeline, I do want to point out that I'm going to conflate asexuality and aromanticism here to a much greater degree than I would normally. This is because there hasn't always been such a rigid distinction between asexuality and aromanticism. And although I'm focusing on asexuality here, the two things do get a little bit muddled, particularly in the early stages. But with all that out the way, let's get into the timeline. 1896 marks one of the earliest, perhaps the earliest, use of the word asexual in the way that we would use it. It was used in a pamphlet titled Sappho and Socrates by a German sexologist. In 1946, Sexual Behaviour in the Human Male was published. This is the first time that the X was added to the Kinsey Scale. The Kinsey Scale is a straight line that measures sexuality from homosexual to heterosexual with bisexuality in the middle. The X meant you didn't fit on the line and stood for no sociosexual contacts or reactions. In 1979, Michael Storm proposed a different model to map sexuality. He suggested that rather than using a straight line like the Kinsey Scale, you should put hetero and homoeroticism on an X and Y axis. This method of plotting sexuality on a graph allowed for differing amounts of sexual attraction and for asexuality. In 1994, a survey of almost 19,000 British residents found that 1% had never experienced sexual attraction to anyone at all. This is where we get that 1% figure that we like to throw around so much. In 1997, the article My Life as an Amoeba by Zoe O'Reilly was published. The importance of this article cannot be overstated because it was one of the first times that an asexual person had actually written about their experience. To take a quote from this article, "I'm out and proud to be asexual. My people are a definite minority group who wish to be recognised like others. We want a coloured ribbon, a national holiday, coupons for fast food. We want people to know that we are out there." And if that seems like a sudden shift from the word almost never having been used before, you have to remember that people were using the word asexual to define themselves long before there was any sort of organised community. The really important thing about this article was the fact it had a comment section, and in that comment section other asexual people started talking about their experiences. It led to one of the first notable examples of an asexual community where asexual people were talking to each other online and discussing what it meant to be asexual. In 2001, the website Avon was founded by David J. Avon stands for Asexual Visibility and Education Network, and to this day it's probably one of the biggest resources for asexuality and one of the first places people turn when they realise they might be asexual. In 2004 we get one of the first major examples of asexuality in academia with Anthony Bogaerts' landmark paper. It was one of the first papers to properly study asexuality and opened up the doors for a whole new wave of research on the orientation. In 2009, asexuals marched in San Francisco Pride. This was the first time that asexual people marched in a pride parade, but it would not be the last. In 2010, the asexual flag as we know it was officially adopted by the asexual community. And finally, it took until 2013, but the 5th edition of the DSM, which is essentially a manual on mental disorders, made it absolutely clear that asexuality was not a medical condition. On the classification of male hyperactive sexual desire disorder, which had often been confused with and conflated with asexuality, they added this note: if the man's low desire is explained by self-identification as an asexual, then a diagnosis of male hyperactive sexual desire disorder is not made. So there you have it. It's incredibly difficult to find information about asexual history because there aren't any books or documentaries on the topic, and finding sources for this video was really quite tricky. I am incredibly thankful for both Avon Wiki and the WordPress Acing History, because without those two resources I wouldn't have been able to make this video. For a full list of my sources, please check the description of this video, and if there's anything that you consider to be a major part of asexual history which I didn't mention here, please feel free to leave a comment. That's all. Bye!